How many four-letter words can I use on that?
Trying to switch to a double. Cheddar is driving. Nothing yet. Takedown, Michael Cheddar.
Oh, Nick, I'm a top guy, so I love top wrestling.
Hale trying to stick him. He does. Maximus Hale the fall.
So I think that wrestling is the greatest sport on earth.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome into On3 Wrestling. I'm your host, Nick Costco, and with me today is a very special guest. He's a national champion from Illinois. It's Lucas Byrd. Some have dubbed you the Short King at this point, but I can only imagine you've gotten a lot of nicknames since winning that title last Saturday night in Philadelphia. But first of all, thanks for coming on, Lucas. It's great to talk to you. I can only imagine this week has been an absolute whirlwind for you.
Yeah, it's been something that's real surreal that kind of comes along with, obviously winning a national title, but it's been real fun.
So let's go back through this entire week. I mean, we'll dive into the match in a second, but what has this week been like for you, knowing that, you make Illinois history? They have a prestigious history of individual national champions, a lot of success, broke a little bit of a national championship drought for the Illini. But a lot of hard work went into this, a long journey for you, and I can only imagine this whole week has just been bliss. Yeah,
it's actually been really nice. Me and my girlfriend's family went up to the Poconos right after the finals, like Sunday, and we got to just kind of hang out up in the mountains. And it was just really relaxing. Didn't really think a whole lot about wrestling, and just kind of got to focus on just kind of relaxing and that little bit of recovery.
Do any snowboarding, skiing, or what was it like up there in the Poconos?
It was cool. It rained, unfortunately, but it was nice because it was just a little cabin. They had a hot tub, they had a sauna. Like, it was nice to just kind of be able to relax and just kind of take in some nature.
What's that mental break for someone of your caliber? And I know wrestlers go through the grind, maybe more so than any other individual sport. What was it like to go from, all right, all your focus is on just that one match on Saturday night, but then the very next day you accomplish your goal and it's like, all right, I can basically just turn my brain off at this point?
Yeah, it's really nice, and that was a big thing I wanted to do. Like, even after I won it, there's a couple pictures. I was sitting up in the concourse. My family's there, the coaches. I'm sitting next to Ellie, and I'm like looking at my phone, and it's like blowing up. And she's like, "Yeah, you're gonna put that on Do Not Disturb." So we put it on Do Not Disturb just to not have any other distractions, just to really soak in the moment, be in the present moment.
I love hearing that. So let's go back to your finals match now that you've been able to decompress. So you defeated Iowa's Drake Ayala, had a bit of a back and forth with him this year. Of course, Big Ten finals a couple weeks prior, you met him in the duel. But this match, very low scoring, so not quite similar to the Big Ten final where you end up sticking him. But you started pushing towards you were pushing him towards the latter stages of that first period. You eventually drew some stall calls out of him about halfway through the match. What was your thought process when there was no score? And I know a lot of people were like, where's the scores? Where's the takedowns? But you were paced a little bit throughout those first 3 minutes. What was going through your head? Was the game plan a little bit different than you initially thought?
There was never really a game plan. It's the one nice thing with me when I wrestle is me and Jeremy never really make a game plan, because I feel like when you make a game plan, if you don't follow it, that's when stuff starts going where it's ooh, I'm supposed to be doing this, and you start almost hyper fixating on a certain thing. So it was more so just going in, hey, he's got a good slide by and he's gonna club and he's gonna single you. And it was making sure our level's low and making sure everything's approached the right way and taking it kind of second by second.
I like that, especially you're kind of free fall. Is that how you normally have wrestled throughout your entire career? Or is that something you had to learn? Being more free flowing and not really sticking to, man, if I don't do A, B, and C, then D, E, and F is not going to happen.
No, kind of always been that free flow. Never really focused on I have to hit this. I have to get to this. If I can't get to it, I'm screwed. Because at this point, especially at this level, there's 1,000 different wrestling moves that I know. So just limiting myself to 2 or 3 of them, it seems like it's a shame to take away all that skill and ability.
So towards the end of the match, you almost took him down right before overtime. I know there was a review. Did you think initially that you had that takedown before I went to the review?
I had a pretty good idea. I was like, oh, I think it's a takedown. And then on the way up before the finals, it was me, Poeta, Hunter, Kanzler, and our trainer Jeff. We were all sitting in the car, and Mike was like, we have a challenge. We have one challenge left. And like that was in like the back of my mind when I got up and they didn't give me the 3. I was like, just throw it. Like we're not taking it with us. Like we might as well. Like this is one of those calls where like like if the right person reviews it, it's
Mhm.
gonna be a takedown. So
Yeah,
it's kind of one of those like it's a 50-50 shot, so we might as well just try.
I like that. So when you get when it's not a takedown, what is your thought process during that review? Where you just like, I'm really hoping it's a takedown, or it's like I don't really care. Let's just go to overtime. I'm ready to keep scrapping.
Yeah, like it didn't really matter. Like it was one of those where like threw it. All right, I walk over and Poeta was like, it might be a takedown, it might not be. I was like, okay. And then that's kind of like me and Jeremy started like talking, and Jeremy's like, hey, like get your hands working, make sure your level stays low, like just kind of giving me those little tidbits that like like the heat of a moment in that match, you're not really thinking about the small stuff that's gonna lead to winning the match.
Mhm.
So it's nice to have Jeremy that's just like, hey man, focus on the little stuff.
So you get to the next position, obviously sudden victory. There's more scrambles. I think the entire arena pretty much erupted when it was like you almost had one, then Drake starts coming
Yeah.
back on top of you. When he's starting to stack up on top of you, are you aware of the clock, or you're just like, oh my god, please don't get on top of me?
I so I don't know that many people know this. The brands will yell different times. And it's happened. So it's like I knew this was gonna happen because when I wrestled DeSanto, they did the same thing. They would yell like if you're close to the corner, they yell different times. So it was kind of in my head like I like that like portion of that scramble was like right next to them. And I'm hearing 40, 45. And I'm like, this just isn't making sense. Like this isn't like so then like as soon as they kind of started like yelling the like big like 40, 50, like those kind of seconds,
Yeah,
I was like,
yeah.
all right, there's gotta be some type of like sense of urgency. Like there's gotta be short time. So then it was like, all right, we gotta just try to score. And then when we got in the scramble, it was just all break loose. It was like, don't get taken down, figure it out. Like find a way to not get taken down even if there's a minute left.
Man, that's really funny. The fact that you went back in your brain in that split second, it's like, wait, they've done this before, and it's
Yeah, it
throwing
was
people off.
yeah. I was like, "No, I know this little trick. I'm not." Yeah.
Man, that's really funny. So it is 2-2. You go to the you go to the second set of 30-second tiebreakers. You know, you have riding time. I believe it was 6 seconds. You go in neutral, and at that point, because you drew stalling calls out of Drake, but you weren't hit for stalling yet. That had to have been the longest 30 seconds of your life.
It was. I've had that happen 2 times in my career. It was the blood round against Jesse Mendez. It was the same thing. He chose neutral and I like obviously he ended up taking me down and I lost in the blood round. And then in this situation, it's kind of one of those things where you want like you're like, all right, I gotta get to a control tie. But you're like, I can't just like lunge at him because
Mhm.
obviously like he's got a good slide by. If I just lunge at him, I'm probably gonna get slid by. So that's where like Jeremy and the like before the like we had this like Iowa challenged the stall.
Mhm.
Jeremy was like, hey, levels, like you see him on the video, he's like tight, like stay tight, stay tight. So I'm like, all right, like we just gotta weather like these next 30 seconds. And you know, you're in the back of your mind, you're like, all right, after these 30 seconds, like I'm a national champ.
I like that mindset. So when when you know you're a national champ, it's only 30 seconds away at that point. I think it went down to 10 seconds, and I think Drake made his final push as well. Do you hear anything in those moments? Now, I mean, I wrestle, but not even close to this level. But I can only imagine with 18,000 people just saying, "Oh my God!" Like either like stalling, or the Iowa fans, or like the
Yeah.
Illinois fans are like, "Oh my God, he's going to do it." What do you hear in those final 10 seconds when you're juking and evading Drake to avoid a takedown?
All I heard was the ref hit me for stalling. Like I heard like stalling and I was like,
Yeah.
damn. And then like when we kind of like I feel like he came in and I like pushed, I like grabbed a single and then worked up to like a body lock. I was like, I didn't hear anything. I was just like, man, we just have to hold on because I didn't know how much time was left.
Yeah.
So I was like, there's got to be short time. Like I just have to hold on. Like this is like arguably probably one of my best positions. So I
Mhm.
just have to stay where I'm comfortable.
It's funny you say you had to hang on for dear life. I think Wyatt Hendrickson said the same thing after he upset Gable. He's like, I've
Yeah.
never held on to a guy so tight.
Yeah.
I imagine you're doing the same thing.
Yeah, it was like I was telling people, I was like, when I kind of like fell into the leg, I was like, I thought about scoring, but I was like, I'm not taking the risk of like something happening. Like, do you imagine there's 5 seconds left? I'm like, oh, I'm gonna get a takedown and then get taken down and lose. Like, that would be the most unfortunate thing of all time. So I just was like, I'm just gonna stay on my feet, stay in a body lock where I'm comfortable.
So you're finally a national champion. It's been a long journey for you. You've been an All-American multiple times in your career. This was your best run of your career. Just the instant reaction. I'm sure all the accolades and the attention and the immediacy. You hug your family, you hug your girlfriend, your coaches. You're running around the tunnel. What were those moments like in the tunnel? Then I guess just trying to decompress after something like that.
Honestly, I just like I wanted to be with my family. I wanted to be around them. I wanted to be around Ellie. Ellie's family was there too, so I wanted to be around with those people that have, and it's like especially with like my family, like they've seen the whole journey. They've seen it from being when I was 4 all the way to being 24, and getting to hang out with them, and then some kids from my dad's club that he has in Ohio, they were also there, and I've kind of got to watch them grow up, and they've got to see me like progress. So it was nice to just be able to hang out with people that was, we took our pictures, and it was like, okay, let's just relax, let's just soak everything in, like that moment of like, all right, like you did it.
Yeah. Did you get to watch the rest of the finals once you got settled in?
I think I sat out in the concourse for I don't know how long. Like I just sat there and just relaxed. Like it was one of those where like I could hear the finals, but I was also like, I just wanna kind of like be away from it right now. Like
Yeah.
I want to be in this present moment with everybody.
I can appreciate that a lot. That's really cool. You're talking about this journey now. I remember when you were, you're dominating just a few years ago. You took a medical red shirt last year, and I remember when you announced your comeback this year. And I'll be straight up and I'll admit, I'm like, he's coming off a medical. I don't know how he's going to perform. Probably going to be really good. I don't know. The weight class is stacked. People were moving up. People were coming down. Whatever the case would be. What was this whole last? What were the whole last 2 years for you? Considering you had these highs, you had these lows of the career. You're out the entire season. You're coming back, and it's. I'm not gonna say people forgot about you, but it's like, did you come in a little bit fresher? What was that? What was the whole 2-year journey like, especially since the last time you were actually on the mat?
I think that big 2-year journey was making sure the game plan never changed. Like it was always, the goal's always been to win a national title. So it was, I got injured, and it was like, okay, either I'm going down the route of I'm gonna take this year and I'm gonna party. I'm not gonna I'm not gonna do what I should be doing, or I'm gonna take this route where I'm really intense on my rehab with what like I could do wrestling wise and training wise, like doing that and making sure that that medical year I like set myself up for the success to be what I like to win it this year.
The blood round was where you ended in 2023. I think you already alluded to it with Jesse
Yeah.
Mendez, who, of course, everyone knows him now, 2-time national champ, going for his third next year. Did you use that loss as motivation? Was there any part in the back of your head where you're like, well, maybe even in perspective right now, it's like, well, that guy's a two-time national champion, no shame in that? Or is that something that kind of fueled you in that whole year where you missed last year?
Yeah, definitely. I would say kind of the biggest kind of moment for me was after he had beat me. I like went down into the tunnel and I sat there and I cried. Like it was hard. Like it sucked. And kind of the one thing I told myself is, I like never want to feel that way again. Like wrestling's the one sport where you have total control of everything. Like, you can control your effort, you control your output, you control like what you do in a wrestling match. So I had come to the term of like, okay, I never want to feel like this. I never want to have this feeling again. And then on the flip side, after I won nationals, I cried. I like did my media and everything, and then I sat down and I put my stuff on, and then like same type of situation, like I was sitting against the wall, like head down, and then the emotions hit me of like you did it. And now I'm kind of on that fuel of like I want to feel it again. Like that feeling is like, okay, like you don't want to feel one way, but now you know how it feels to do it. Now let's chase that feeling of wanting to do it again.
What actually assured you that you could do something like that? Considering, I mean, I can only imagine a blood. You were on the podium multiple times before. You fall short that time a couple of years ago in Tulsa, and when you're sulking your head, was there a moment right then and there, or did it take a little bit to remind yourself, I can do this, and have a year like you just did right now in Philadelphia?
I think it definitely kind of takes some time because it's like, yeah, like Jesse's a great wrestler, and obviously like 2-time national champ, like there's no sweat to losing to somebody like that. But deep down, like I'm like, all right, I should have won. Like I know I can compete with the best in the country, and I'm like, I should have won that match. Like that's what at least what I'm telling myself. And now it's like, okay, just keep improving. Keep trying to get better. Keep your head down and just focus on getting better at wrestling.
I like that. I wanted to throw it back to your high school days a little bit because LaSalle athletic director Brian Meyer, I do want to get this quote right. He said, "Your dedication to the sport and commitment to excellence always defined you and made you one of the best athletes and people to walk the halls of the school." I don't know if you saw that or heard that, but what's your reaction to that?
I mean, that's awesome. I feel like that it definitely is something that sticks with me. It's one of those things where whether you're a big time athlete in high school or you're a big time athlete in college, it's you have to put in the work, and the sport of wrestling will force you to put in the work. You will see who puts in the work and who doesn't put in the work, and it's kind of one of those things where you see it. You're like,
Mhm.
okay, like this guy works really really hard, and you're like, he's gonna be successful. Like, and that's where like I've talked a lot recently. Like wrestling is like gives and takes,
Mhm.
right? So like, yeah, you put in all this work, but wrestling's still gonna take away from you. Like wrestling is still gonna take those big moments away. But that's where you have to kind of realize I can't change what I'm doing.
Mhm.
I have to stick to the game plan. I have to get better, where I'm not as good and kind of improve off of that. And then when that wrestling gives, like it's one of those where it could be a national title. It's a Big Ten title.
Mhm.
It's your like first, top 10 win. Like it's one of those things where when it's gonna give really well.
Part of that give and take, did you experience a lot of that give and take even at the high school level when when you're getting better and better, you're being recruited and then you eventually commit to a Division I institution? Or did you not experience some of that big time give and take until you were on the national stage over the last few years?
I didn't really experience that like give and take until kind of being on the national stage
Mm,
level. It's always been weird for me. Like high school, I knew I wanted to wrestle in college.
yeah.
I like knew I was like, all right, like I'm gonna be good at like I'm gonna put in the work. I'm gonna wrestle in college. And then like I watched my brother wrestle in college, but I like never watched college wrestling growing up.
Mm,
Like I like, and it's funny uh like Isaiah Martinez.
yep.
I like the only time I really watched him was when the national finals were on, and I like saw him in the or like Kyle Dake. Like I
Yeah.
think a big match of Dake and Taylor was maybe like I watched him at the Scuffle or something, and then it was
Mhm,
like, oh hey, these guys are in the national finals. Like let's watch, and then I would watch. Like I never really like followed college wrestling as a high schooler, where I feel like
mhm.
nowadays a lot of those high school kids like, well, one, they're wrestling in college tournaments, but two, they're like beating high level guys and they're like really following along with people's story.
Yeah, I like that. It's interesting you bring something up, something like that up, but because now I feel like all the high school kids, as you just mentioned, they're wrestling in college opens. They're trying
Yeah.
to experience now. With that couldn't have even been a thought for you, considering you're like, oh, I want to wrestle in college, but was there any thought of like, I want to compete against these college guys, tomorrow or something?
There was never like it was always just kind of like, all right, we're gonna focus on like winning a high school state title because at
Mhm.
the time like that was the big goal for me and then it was like I'm not like huge into freestyle and Greco, so it was never
Yeah,
like I was like, oh hey, I'm gonna throw my hat in the US Open and compete with, guys like Nathan Tomasello and
yeah,
DeSanto and all these guys and it's really surreal to kind of see it now. And it's like, dang, like that was me, you know, 8 years ago. Like I was in those high school kids' shoes
yeah, yeah.
and they're wrestling against like not even wrestling, but beating really high level collegiate athletes.
Mhm. You have Isaiah Martinez, one of your coaches on the staff. Of course, he's an Illini legend, two-time national champion. He's also seen the highs and lows of the sport. Did you lean on him for any experience, considering where you were on the podium, then the blood round, and of course winning this national title? Did he give you any wise words, leading into this match or even throughout the season? Because again, he started out strong, and then along comes a guy named Vincenzo Joseph. It kind of shocks the world at that point when he was already a two-time champ.
Yeah, definitely leaned on him a little bit. I would say more so I leaned with Jeremy,
Mhm.
Hunter. That's kind of like been my guy. It's before every match. It's get to your offense. You
Yep.
got 1,000 different ways to score on people, and just go out and have fun. And obviously, Jeremy did it on the big stage.
Mhm.
And I mean, he's probably one of the hardest working people I know. So it's kind of been leaning on him of, when I was in like after like I lost to Ayala, like me and him had a really long talk and was like, hey man, like I've got it, like something's got to change. Like whether I was being complacent with where I was at or whether, we needed to fix something inside the room. But I feel like after that moment of like, we kind of had that like breakthrough almost of where it was like, all right, everything's transparent. Like it's out in the open. This is how we all feel. And then from then I really started to notice like these gains are becoming what I want them to be. And then leading into winning it on Saturday.
Mm-hmm. When you came back this year, of course, 133 was a loaded weight, especially in the Big Ten. So winning the Big Ten title was a huge accomplishment in itself. You already mentioned Drake Ayala, other guys like Nick Bouzakis of Ohio State, Braden Davis, Penn State, Dylan Shawver of Rutgers, and of course, I think Braxton Brown too of Maryland. When you came back this year, did you look at that weight class and you were like, were you just licking your chops? You're like, oh my God, there's a lot of guys to take out this year.
I mean, like, I wouldn't say like, oh, I got to take him out.
Yeah.
It was more so like, I just knew I was the best. Like really, that's like a really cocky answer, but like for me, it was, I came in and I was like, oh, like I'm winning Big Tens this year. Like I'm winning a national title, but it was like, oh, like it's going to be hard. Like all these guys are really good wrestlers, but I'm coming after a Big Ten title.
I like that. I like that mentality. Hey, if it's only cocky, you can't back it up. So I like the way you phrase that.
Yeah, like I feel like a lot of people like they're like, oh, that guy's real cocky and arrogant, and it's like I won't lie, like I'm cocky, but I feel like I want it to come off more of confidence.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very confident in my wrestling ability. Like I'm confident with the skill set that I have to beat anybody.
Well, clearly the confidence paid off with a national title. So I'm pretty sure you've been asked about this already. I'm sure you've seen it by now. Daniel Cormier obviously made his big comments on ESPN. First of all, when did you actually get a chance to watch this? I know you basically decompressed after your finals match, didn't really watch much in the arena. And then again, you took your time over in the Poconos this past week. When did you actually get to, when did somebody bring that to your attention?
So we actually watched it at the like her dad, it was the first time Ellie's family had been to a wrestling event, and her dad was like really into it, and he was like,
wow.
He was like, we're gonna watch, like we need to watch it again, like I need like a play-by-play of like what's going on. So like we watched my finals and then we watched my first round match because he said that was like the most nerve-wracking match he's ever seen. But we like watched it, and then obviously like on social media, I saw it a bunch, and people would text me, they're like, "Oh, DC's calling you a short kid," like all these things, and then I finally saw it all.
That's pretty funny. Again, jokes aside, it's got to be pretty cool knowing that a wrestling legend like Daniel Cormier, and of course a two-division UFC champion. That's got to be pretty cool. Him calling your match at that point.
No, yeah, it's awesome. I also spent some time in California with DC because I'm like going that MMA route. So
nice.
Especially with Austin O'Connor when he was starting to fight, he had that connection with Cormier, and Jacob Casper has that connection. So it was kind of easy to get to meet him and like obviously get to train with him. But it was awesome like having him call the match.
I can only imagine. You brought up your girlfriend Ellie a couple times, and of course, I'm not going to regurgitate what's already known, which you guys are TikTok famous. I'm sure you got more of a blow up at this point following this national tournament. What's it been like to have her at your side? Especially, I mean, I want to go back to last year too, where you weren't wrestling. What's it been like? Her support? What's all that been like? Especially her family too. Yeah, I can't believe that's the first time her family saw a wrestling match.
Yeah. It's been awesome. It's been one of those things where Ellie dealt with injuries in college and had to like medically retire, and really getting to lean on her and like see her, like I got to help her kind of work through her time, and then being able to kind of really lean on her of like getting through this injury because she lived it. She knew she like knew how I was going to feel. Like she knew there was going to be hard days where she was going to have to, really help and lift me up. And there were going to be days where I felt like I could wrestle, but it was like, hey, like, don't jump back into it. Like, there's no point. You're not like, we're not coming back. Like, don't rush into anything. And it's just, overall her support through everything has been one of the best things for me.
And I don't want to say she was the only one who could understand it. I'm sure your family and friends could, relate to you and, try to do you like that. But I guess, did she put it over the edge knowing that she went through almost an exact same situation? And as you just mentioned, she had to medically retire from her sport.
Yeah, it was definitely one of those things where it was, we'd have talks where it was, hey, don't take things for granted. Like you're going to come back from this injury. And a big thing for me was like, am I going to be able to wrestle how I always am able to wrestle? Like, am I going to be able to do this? And it was like, hey, like, this is things are going to change, but like, you're still going to wrestle the same. You're still going to be the great wrestler that you are. Like, you just have to put in a little more effort now and like making sure like going to rehab, because my rehab sucked. I hated going to rehab, Because like for me, like my trainer would have to like so like my wrist doesn't, it's hard to see. My wrist
Yeah.
doesn't bend as much. So my trainer would have to push on it.
Wow.
And it was just a bunch of pain. So I didn't like going because it hurt. Like it hurt so bad. But like
Mhm.
at the end of the day, it was my trainer, staff, parents, and Elliot was like, hey, like you have to do this. Like if you want to get back to where you like are, like you have to do this.
When you talk about your wrist not being able to bend, and of course, I don't know how, for the uneducated, any injury to a wrestler is obviously going to hinder the way you
Yeah.
attack your style. Your wrist, I can only imagine, because are you right-handed, by the way?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah.
I can only imagine that was probably the worst injury you could have had, considering it was your right hand. You mentioned not wanting to go to rehab, or just saying, "Oh my God, this thing sucked."
Yeah.
Towards the end, was it a little bit easier, or was it like, "All right, I just can't wait for this to be done, but I'll do it"?
No, it definitely got easier. And then like as I met with our doctors, like they told me I wasn't gonna get full mobility back.
Mhm.
So it was nice to kind of go in. I was like, all right, like I'm not gonna get it back, but we're gonna get as much back as we can. And then really like it was after the first couple times was where I was like, dang, like this rehab sucks. Like it hurts. Like I don't want to go. But then after that, it was really like, okay, like we're like I took it way more serious than I was in the beginning, and we really started to make a lot of those big improvements of like the mobility wise. But it was one of those things where it was like it was another like little stepping
Yeah.
stone, little curve of like, all right, we just got to learn how to deal with this now.
Do you remember the exact moment when you heard it, or was it a combination of things?
Oh, I remember exactly when I did it. I was getting ready to go to the open for Greco,
Mhm.
and I got arm spun, and I'm pretty good at like floating my hips,
Yeah.
and I just didn't float my hip. Like I just brain fart, and I landed like upside down, and then like this, like really
Oh,
fast. And as
man.
soon as I did it, I rolled over. I was like, I broke my wrist. Like I
Oh
knew
my
I
God.
did something. And Brian Medlin comes over, our RTC coach, and he looks and he like told me after, he was like, there was like a big lump, and then he saw the lump disappear. And he didn't say anything. Like he like told me afterwards, but he was like, I didn't want to say anything because I didn't want to freak you out
Yeah.
anymore. So then like we obviously like I went to I like called Ellie. I was like, Ellie, I need you to take me to the hospital, please.
Oh,
And
nice.
she's like, what? Like, why? Like, what? I was like, I don't know. I messed my wrist up. I can't drive. Like, because I drive a stick shift. So I was like, I can't drive.
Oh, no.
I need you to give me to where the doctors. Go to the doctors. Doctor looks at it. It's like, all right, I don't like see anything wrong. Like, we're going to get an MRI, send you on your way. And then all of a sudden he like peeks his head back in and he's like, hey, actually, we're going to have our like hands specialist look at
Mhm.
this. And he's like, I'll be back. Close the door. And Ellie looks at me and goes, that is never a good
Oh,
sign.
no.
So it ended up being so I dislocated my paralunate bone.
Mhm.
And it's like usually what happens is it doesn't get caught because it's kind of weird how the bones don't look completely out of whack.
Yeah.
And what ends up happening is like people's fingers go numb because it like gets cut off or something. But lucky for me, like somebody had saw it and we were able to get in. So like I went to our doctor and he was like came back, he was like, hey, like you need to go to the hospital and get that re-put back into place, and then you'll have surgery in a couple days.
It's good that you caught it right away, but
Yeah.
you drive stick shift. How crazy were you going until that wrist was fully healed?
Luckily, my dad, like we swapped cars. So I like
Oh,
still
good.
could drive, but it was definitely like I wasn't allowed to like run. Like my like hand surgeon was like, hey,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
don't want you running. Like if you fall, like it's one of those things where it's like you're like, oh, I'm not gonna fall. Like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
you know what I mean? And he was like, yeah, but when you're thinking about not falling is when you usually fall. So it was like I couldn't run. I just did a lot of biking and like a
Mhm.
lot of stance and motion.
Wow. Not going.
Yeah, it was.
I've gone on runs before where I'm just running around the neighborhood and I'm just like, yeah, this is normal. And then all of a sudden I take one bad step off a sidewalk and I make a
Yeah.
tumble, then I scrape up everything. So I can imagine where you're very limited in those workouts. How much biking did you do? I mean, I would assume it was a stationary bike and it's just
Yeah.
a lot of
I did.
stance motion. You weren't worried about falling then, at least.
No, yeah, but lots of biking, lots of just kind of stance and motion, but really focusing on like just being in my stance, like being
Yeah.
like low level, making sure the body stays used to, being in a stance for an extended amount of time.
Did that low key actually help you, knowing that? I mean, I can only imagine you use stance and motion. You work on stance and motion all the time, but if that's the only thing you really could have done, I mean, did your stance actually improve after overtime at that point?
Oh, definitely for sure. Like I definitely feel like my body's a little more used to just kind of being hunched over, being
Mhm.
in a stance, but it's a little easier to like make sure my levels are
Yeah.
staying smart, and then that's how we're winning wrestling matches.
Without a doubt. So on a related note, back to the popularity thing of, obviously, you've seen it on social media, the NCAA wrestling championship in general, the viewership looks like it went up a lot compared to
Yeah,
last year. I think it was like the highest since 2017 or 2018.
I saw that.
So I guess just in a general sense, what have you seen the sport of wrestling do in a positive light over the last year or two to make this jump in popularity? Do you think this championships was just a one-off, or do you think there's something going on in the sport where this could now be a little bit more sustainable to increase the popularity of the sport for, let's say, over the next 5 to 10 years?
I definitely think that wrestling kind of has that little something going on that can help like boost it. I think one of the bigger things though is women's wrestling.
Yeah.
I feel like that like has brought a lot of attention to the sport of wrestling because I'm sure there's probably a lot of people out there that want to try wrestling that are like they are women, but
Mhm.
they're like, oh, I don't want to wrestle guys. But now it's like, hey, we have, and now it's collegiately. So it's one of those things where not only is men's kind of having that light, but also women's gets to have their spotlight of being a competitive athlete in the sport of wrestling. And I think it's kind of one of those things where it can just kind of keep growing, keep getting better and better. And then I really think these high school kids are just getting better and better. Like I feel like there's a lot of energy behind like certain high, like not even certain, but high school kids that are looking to compete in college in the next 4 to 5 years. And I think that's going to bring a lot of light to it.
So two things on that. Yeah, I wanted to start with women's wrestling because you brought it up. I've talked to multiple people about the growth of women's wrestling. I think it's
Hmm.
still the fastest growing high school sport in the country right now.
Yeah.
What have you seen around the Illinois area, either at Illinois, whether there's a women's club team at Illinois, or the high school scene around the area? What have you noticed with women's wrestling and why it's been just so popular and positive?
More so we had like our team camps. I
Hmm.
feel like, a few years ago I didn't see any girls that were in it to like whether they were on their high school team or whatever it was. But I
Mm.
feel like in the recent years I've seen like a more presence of them kind of being at these camps and they really want to get better at wrestling.
Yeah.
Like they're not just there to like be there, but like a lot of them they're asking a lot of questions. They're trying to like get better.
Mhm. I like hearing that. And then you mentioned the other thing about the high school kids just wanting to wrestle collegiately. Do you think the transfer portal / NIL has an even bigger factor now? I mean, I don't want to say kids in high school are saying, I just want to go where I'm going to get paid the most because that's
Yeah.
only set for the elite of the elite. But I got to imagine that is a factor, especially once they get into the Division I level, should they get there.
Yeah, definitely plays a big factor of, where kids are gonna go to school, where
Mhm.
like, and unfortunately it's kind of been one of those things where it's like who can offer the most money. Like that's
Right.
what like a lot of these high school kids like you don't like yeah, the money's cool and everything, but sometimes it's not always, as nice and glamorous as it looks when you kind
Mhm.
of you're in the program for a few years.
What's the NIL situation been like for you personally and for the Illinois team? I mean, there's NIL opportunities for pretty much anybody if they can make something of it. What's been the support system like at Illinois for you guys as well? As I know the NIL space is still it's not new anymore, but because it changes seemingly every day, it just seems like it is new every day.
Yeah, we definitely have a big support. We have a place on campus that is you were able to partner with that makes, different types of shirts for all the athletes on like campus. But other than that, like personally, I haven't really kind of chased a lot of those like NIL deals. I
Mhm.
kind of stick to myself. I like to just kind of relax and kind of focus on small things. Like I feel like trying to focus on all that,
Mhm.
it takes away from trying to focus on wrestling and I feel like that's where it's a little different. Sometimes people are like, "Oh, well, I gotta sell 100 shirts to make $500," and it's like you should focus on hitting your single legs. Like you should focus on like hitting wrestling moves and getting better at wrestling, rather than oh, I gotta sell these shirts so I can make a quick buck.
Maybe there's an NIL deal from the Poconos in your future, I would say. As far as your future, I believe you actually do have 1 year of eligibility. Is your next year of eligibility, is that confirmed yet, or are you still working through process and paperwork?
I don't know how it all works with like it being a medical,
Mhm.
but from what I've been told, I do have an extra year left with it. But I don't know how I don't know how, because I know you get it at the end of your career,
Yeah.
but I don't know if like they just tell me, hey, you have, you have the year,
Yeah.
or if like I have to like go like try to be so like whether it's at Illinois or whatever it is, and then
Mhm.
they're like, oh, hey, you do have this year. Hey, you don't have the year.
Gotcha. Do you plan on, if you do get it, do you plan on using that for next season?
That's kind of where I'm at right now. I've
Mhm.
been, sitting on it, talking with friends, family, really trying to figure out what the best path for me is.
Do you know if there's a timeline for a decision where you're going to know if you have it or not, or is it, as you just mentioned, still kind of up in the air?
I mean, I'm from what like I've been told I have it,
Okay.
but I don't know like I don't know. I should probably actually figure that out, but I don't entirely know what the whole situation with it is.
Gotcha. Did want to clear that up, as obviously people would love to see you, especially in an Illini singlet next year, chasing a second national championship in Cleveland next year. So that's your future for the collegiate level. I know you've done some Greco stuff in the past, as you mentioned before. Of course, not to bring up bad memories with the wrist injury, of course.
Yeah,
But
all
do
good.
you plan on trying to train for this Olympic cycle for LA 2028, whether it's freestyle or Greco, or do you think maybe one more year of college wrestling and then that's it?
I think probably one more year, and then I'm pushing for the MMA route. That's kind of a big goal of mine.
So with MMA, you mentioned Austin O'Connor already. I've talked to him before. Again, two-time champ from North Carolina. He's helping you guys out at Illinois right now. He's fighting right now. What have your conversations been like with him as far as the MMA route is concerned?
Just more so, you got to be willing to want to be punched in the face,
Yeah.
and you got to be comfortable with stuff like that. So obviously, it was nice to see him have a fight. I got to help him train up, kind of like leading up to his fight, and
Mhm.
get to see him do that was awesome. But just being comfortable with being punched in the face, like it's one of those experiences that you kind of have to feel before you really know.
Yeah.
But ever since I was a kid, it's like I want to be in the MMA. Like I want to fight. I want to be a UFC world champ, and that's kind of been the plan. And the older I've gotten, the more it's kind of flourished into like,
Yeah.
okay, I've got contacts with Daniel Cormier. Like I've got other contacts with people where it's like, all right, like let's make it into a reality.
It's interesting that you mentioned that you've been into the UFC. You've wanted to fight MMA since you were younger. Did that kind of coincide with wrestling as you were growing up, or
Yeah.
okay? So when you do that, is it like I'm going to use wrestling? I want to stay dedicated to the craft. I want to accomplish my goals, but it's going to lead me to MMA. Did you ever think about the Olympics at one point, or was it just kind of like I do want to go the MMA route the entire time?
For sure, definitely thought about the Olympics at one point, especially
Mhm.
after I made the world team. It was like, like this would be so cool to,
Yeah.
be in the Olympics. But then just kind of, it was more so now it's kind of been just that MMA nose to the grindstone and figuring it all out.
When you eventually begin your MMA career, what does that look like for you? Do you stick around Illinois? Do you maybe again? I know you talk with Daniel Cormier a little bit. Do you wait a long time for an amateur fight? Do you go right to a pro fight right away? What's your timeline look like? I guess roughly before you
Yeah.
start fighting MMA.
No, I think I want to pull an amateur fight, whether it
Yeah.
be like sometime in the summer this year, whether it
Mhm.
be after next season. Definitely want to get an amateur fight or a few just under my belt to,
Mhm.
figure out like the little stuff I need to work. And then once I get into the pro fight, just kind of figuring it out with Ellie where, if we're gonna stay in Illinois, if we're
Mhm.
gonna stay in Pennsylvania, or if we're gonna move where we gotta move to get the best training. But it's obviously has to benefit the both of us.
Mhm. When you talk about your MMA training, again, the wrestling is down pat. It does change a little bit, of course, for MMA
Yeah.
purposes, but you have that already under your belt, and we've seen a lot of wrestlers translate very well to MMA, and especially the upper echelons of the UFC. How's your striking? Just to be straight up, how's your striking?
It's not great. It needs work. Like it's like honestly, like it needs work, but it's one of the things where like I recognized that a while ago when I was training with Austin. I was like, dang, like my striking sucks and I need to work on it. So that'll obviously like be a big focus. My
Yeah.
jujitsu is not terrible.
Okay.
I'm pretty comfortable just kind of moving and flowing and rolling around. But other than that, like kind of working on my striking, make sure I'm getting better there is what's the important goal.
Did you dabble in jujitsu or striking earlier on in your college career or even your high school career, or did it kind of wait until you were at the college level for both those things?
My high school, there was a local gym that wanted to help have me help come out and train some fighters.
Mhm.
So I was a part of I was a wrestling partner for him, but also in the process rolling jujitsu, putting gloves on, kind of figuring that all out. And then just kind of stuck with it a little bit. And then, I mean, for me, wrestling and jujitsu are like fairly similar in like a sense to me. So just kind of once I started rolling that, like I've always been pretty comfortable doing it.
I've been doing jiu-jitsu for 5 years. Of course, not at any pro level, but I can understand the similarities coming from a wrestling background too. It's like I don't want to go on my back, and then all of a sudden, a year in, I'm like, okay, I'm fine with going on my back.
Yeah, it's like kind of one of those more comfortable things where I'm like, all right, I'm comfortable with pull and guard. I prefer not to, but I can do it.
Yeah. Absolutely. So, Lucas, I appreciate your time today, man. I wanted to leave you with this because I noticed it on your biceps. I'm always curious about guys who have tattoos, especially written ones out. And I do want to say for the audience, it on your biceps, it does say, what I had, I gave, and then what I saved, I lost. I'm pretty sure I have that right. What does that mean to you? Where did that originate from? And actually, how long have you had those on your arms?
So I've had the tattoo since I was 18. It's funny. It's at a saying. So in like my high school, we're in like the Greater Catholic, the GCL, and that saying is on a wall at one of our like rival high schools. But it was, it's been one of those things where like you give everything and you save nothing. Like everything that you have, you should give, and whatever you save is just kind of a waste of a save, you know?
Yeah, I like that. I really do. That's a nice little message, especially whether it's life or wrestling. But in any event, Lucas, congratulations on your national title. If you are indeed coming back for the 25-26 season, I'm looking forward to it. Really appreciate talking to you, and again, spend some time with us today.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks so much for having me on, and yeah.
Absolutely. Lucas Byrd, Illinois Wrestling 2025 NCAA champion right here on On3 Wrestling. Be sure to check out our content at on3.com. Follow me on Twitter. Give Lucas a follow on all his social media platforms as well. And we'll see you next time.